Hello all, Rick here, and this video is an interview I got to do with the executive producer of Star Trek Online in regards to its new chapter, Corruption, and I got to cover past, present and future directions of STO, as well as just talk about some neat ship designs, details, canon and more. To clarify, Mr. Marrone helped refine, then design the Enterprise F, created the Pathfinder Voyager B, and Ross class among many other STO ships that are now canonical. Wouldn't be a me interview if something didn't get missed, and this time it was this intro. This is a re-recording, so thank you to Star Trek Online for facilitating this. Congrats to Thomas for his promotion and extra pips on the collar, and let's start it by asking about his rise through from his entry point into Cryptic way back when.
They were our publisher and the owner, and I actually was hired to work on the web team doing website designs for the games that Atari published, which included the Cryptic games, it included STO, but it was also lots of other random stuff, and Neverwinter did some work on websites and stuff for Neverwinter too. But yeah, it was a fun job, but I really got my foot in the door because I really wanted to work on STO. And after about 6 months, there was an opening on the UI team as a UI artist for STO, so I got moved over there, and and so I learned a lot, obviously over the years, and I went from UI artist to learning 3D modeling so I could be a ship artist, and then I eventually became a ship art lead, and then I became art director, and now I'm recently christened executive producer of the game.
And again, congrats.
Thank you.
I remember you have a. I don't know if it's still there. I've not checked recently, but there is an NPC of you in universe in STO, isn't there? I believe.
There was. I don't know. I don't think you can go to Memory Alpha anymore.
No.
That's where he was. He also did show up. He might still be on our space dock in the 10 forward, or the 47 forward, or whatever, the Club 47. I think it's what it is.
Yeah, because I remember
he was there for a while. Yeah, that was so that was part of the agreement that I made with the team back before I got hired. I did some mock-ups and put them on a website, and put them on the forums for the game. They were mock-ups for like a scanning mini game, and the team heard about them and liked them and wanted to implement them in the game, and so they offered, I was paid a little bit of money, and I had to sign a contract, right, to give them rights to use the assets. And then one of the things they also added, like, do you want to be an NPC in the game? It's like, do I want to be an NPC in a Star Trek game? Do I want to become a beta canon character in Star Trek? Of course I do.
Yeah, and I think I remember
So
they even, I think his dialogue was even in reference to the fact that he was overhauling the LCAR's UI interface like, in game as well.
Yeah.
Which is, I love that little detail, just like folding in. Anyway, yeah, so I thought I'd ask a couple of questions, basically centered around a bit of ship design, a bit of the approach that Star Trek Online can take and where it fits in like the wider like Trek family, and yeah, how much sway in like this story and direction of Star Trek Online do you have now, having moved up from like art direction?
Right. So, I mean, that's an interesting question because it's video games are a team effort. Yeah. So yeah, it's interesting, in terms of like input is a broad term when we talk about planning the story and the storyline of the game and the lore of the game, because it's a big team. There are a lot of people who have input at different levels. You kind of the people at the the managers, the leads at my level are it's a very broad input in terms of setting the direction of these are the celebrities we want to feature, these are the kind of critter groups or enemies we want to feature, and then so we have those conversations, and those conversations include people like Jeremy Randall, our lead designer, our writer Flo. During the DECA transition, Rich Hayden was a big part of those conversations, the creative director. He's moved over to Neverwinter now. He's still with us at Cryptic, but anyway, so you have these kind of very high level story breakdowns that we do, and then we set people off in a direction, and then you hand that over to the content designers, and Flo gets in there and really starts to like attack the script in very, specific ways. The content designers building the missions will come up with like very specific beats of like, oh, we need this thing to happen because we need to gameplay here that's like this, right? And then you'll find that there's a lot of back and forth and a lot of like, well, okay, we have these elements that people need to scan or collect or destroy, and then okay, so what are they, right? Like we know we want this gameplay element of scanning this thing. So what is that thing, and then how does it feed back to the larger lore, right? So there's a lot of feedback, these feedback loops between the people building the actual content and then the writer, and then and then of course the higher level managers are also like in those conversations, kind of helping to keep it all going in the same direction. So the short answer is quite a bit, but at the same time, it is collaborative, and it's
Yeah.
something that we all, that a ton of people have input in. By the time that players play the mission, it's been touched by a lot of hands.
Yeah. So sounds like it starts as like a almost like a top down. These are the gameplay elements we want to introduce. Now let's see what we can do with the story to shape that and make that happen.
Yeah, to some degree. I mean, you're asking yourself, I mean, like the question is like who, for example, like who haven't we had in STO yet? Who would we like to work with? Who we would like to bring into STO? And so what's going on with the larger franchise right now, right? Those are all questions that those are the foundational questions you want to answer as you get going. And then as you start to answer those questions, then you're like, okay, we haven't worked with this actor ever or in a long time, or it would be great to work with them. Okay, so that means that we want to use this character. So then obviously we got to clear that with Paramount, right?
Right.
I'm actually going through this whole process now for the rest of the year. So when we clear that with Paramount, we basically come up with a very brief pitch of like, we want to use this character, we want them to do this thing. This is how it ties into the larger story of the game, but it's okay. It's not going to interfere with any of the other stuff that's happening in this TV show or the franchise or whatever. So you make that pitch and Paramount green lights it, and then you go back and you say, okay, we've got that green lit, and so now we have to reach out to the actor and then make sure that they want to be involved, right? And so if they say yes, they'd like to be involved with STO, then you start to say, okay, awesome. So now that we're going to use this character, what is the why? Like what how are they contributing to whatever is happening in the story, and how do we turn it into a very cool like character beat for them? I'm really excited about the upcoming mission in Corruption Curse of Phrygia, because like it's about Ezri Dax um, in a way, and it actually examines her life and the choices or the circumstances of her life, I think, in an interesting way. And that's really important because you don't want to just have a character come on and be, you know, like the fact that they were there didn't really matter, right? You like
No. Yeah.
these are important characters to people. You want to serve the actors, right, and make sure that their time is well spent and that people come away from whatever mission a character's in by either like having a great moment with that character that you'll always remember, or learning more about that character, or giving that character to do something that they normally wouldn't have an opportunity to do, right? That's why the Denise Crosby being like good guy Sela was so fun.
Yeah.
Um, a couple of years ago, because it was or was it last year? I think it was 2 years, 2024. Anyway,
I
I
think
don't
it's
know. It's
between.
time
Yeah.
is a flat circle. But yeah, that was something. It's like, well, we're we have this opportunity of this alternate universe, and we're gonna have Denise in. So what if Sela was a good guy, and what if Sela was the captain of the Enterprise? And it's just a totally different take on that. It was fun to give her that range. And so you're just looking for those opportunities to get the most out of working with these amazing actors, because you don't like they come in, they do their parts for the one mission, but you might not see them again for a very long time
Right.
in STO or otherwise, right?
Yeah.
So we want to make the most of that opportunity.
So with those sort of like opportunities, you're saying like how the characters, are sort of picked, and then there's all this scheduling and availability stuff. Is part of that why Star Trek Online? It's always been there, but it seems the last couple of expansion patches have sort of really delved into the sort of the multiversal aspect of it. because it's always been this at the bottom at the end of the garden. It's always been this excuse to have all the toys of Star Trek in one place for fans to play with, right? But it seems to be like it's moving into this multiversal era of Star Trek Online more and more. Was part of that transition sort of informed by sort of having this ability to play with more toys from the Trek universe? And
yeah, I mean, that's definitely it definitely opens a lot of doors because it means you can use characters that you wouldn't otherwise use because they're dead or like and I think that we don't want to. I know a lot of people they've enjoyed it, but they're also we've been in this storyline for a while, so I don't think we'll always I don't think we'll be doing. My intention right now, let's put it that way, my intention right now is that we'll not always be doing multiversal stories for forever going forward, right? Like we do intend to end this arc at some point in the future. We'll wrap this up. We'll wrap this story up. And we'll see what happens, but I think that ultimately we want to kind of get back to we've had a lot of fun in this sandbox, but we do need to kind of get back to a more limited scope of this is the STO universe that we're dealing with, and what does that mean. And I think there's also and I think a lot of people are also kind of tired of the the huge stakes in STO and like war after war after war, and it's a challenge for us storytellers because you need conflict to be in your game because you need to have people fight things because that's the gameplay, right? And so and unfortunately for a Star Trek game in general, but certainly unfortunately for us, it's much more efficient to make gameplay combat driven as opposed to come up with like diplomatic gameplay or scientific gameplay, right? Like doing that stuff is possible, but in terms of the time investment of developer versus how much time it takes a player to play that content is it's much more dense for non-combat than combat, right? In terms of like how much developer time goes into non-combat gameplay, is actually much higher than how much time goes into developer making just making some combat encounters and stuff,
because of things like dialogue and cutscenes and things
dialogue,
like that
cutscenes, but also like any sort of mini games or puzzles, right? Puzzles are actually incredibly hard to do, and we've spent weeks. I remember when we were doing all the Voyager stuff. We spent weeks prototyping puzzles and going back and forth, and it was kind of a nightmare, and they ended up like if you play them, they're cool, but they're pretty simple. It seems simple, right? But it's not. It's incredibly complex to do that given our technology, given the requirements of messaging, like making people understand how the puzzle works, what they have to do, right? Like it's all very challenging, and requires a lot. So that's, when you're developing a mission in Star Trek Online, those are all the things, we have a release cadence that we kind of have to hit. We kind of have to do three big releases a year, and that's important because players want to play the game. They want new content. They constantly want new content, so we want to keep delivering it for them. And so we have to make sure that any new content we're developing, we're developing to hit that timeline, right? And so that's always a concern in balancing that out.
You've inadvertently answered one of my other questions that I've had there, which was going to be like a two-pronged sort of question, which was what sort of aspect of Star Trek do you think STO is best suited for telling? And then I was going to flip it and say, what do you think it's not the ideal platform for, but you'd like to see? So like,
I mean that. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, so it sounds to me like the aspects that it's perhaps, like you were saying, not the ideal platform for is to do so much of that sort of non-combat character-driven stuff.
Right.
But I have noticed that there has been an increase of that in the last few expansions, especially centered around characters like Kumaki, exploring like shock and trauma from facing the Borg and things like that, which, those are like very drama-based character emotional beats that sort of I really kind of appreciated seeing in a game that is generally a combat-centric game.
Yeah, and I have to give a lot of credit to our animators, Weston and Paul, for really being able to like without those guys, and Weston was carrying that alone for a very long time. Um, Without his ability to execute those cutscenes and show that emotion on our character models, which are, it's an aged game. It's a venerable elder game.
True.
Um, and so some of our assets are of an age, but Weston's still able to sort of imbue that our characters with a ton of emotion, and he makes them act, right? Like the animators are essentially the actors of the game. And so they're able to communicate those feelings in a really like nuanced way that is always kind of surprising to me, but really tells the story. You're gonna see that. You're gonna see a lot of that in this coming episode as well. So yeah, we've got some great character moments. We have been able to get away with it, but I mean, that's really only because we have such a great stable of we've got a great animator in Weston, and one of our newer animators, Paul, from came with us to the DECA transition. He's done a lot of really awesome work on the Chimerans to make them super
Ooh,
creepy,
they are. Yeah,
and
they're good. I do
yeah,
like them.
yeah, I think people are gonna really dig them in a in a kind of a thrilling way. They're very unique, and
Yeah.
uh, yeah.
Generally, I'm enjoying the whole like the Ethereum
Hmm.
Chimera and arc, and the poster art for the next gameplay chapter coming out is it's definitely haunting. I quite like it. There's a lot of questions I have about it, but I'll save it because spoilers probably
Hmm.
that you can't talk about, and the answer will be
Right.
play it to find out probably.
Yeah, yeah. No, I'm excited. We'll have to reconvene once you played it and let me know what you think.
Yeah, like that.
But
That'll
I
be
mean,
fun.
yeah, it's been fun with the Chimerans and the Etherians and talking about the Borg in general and that
Yes.
sort of spectrum of order versus chaos, and finding that, kind of coming to realize that really unlocked how we contrast all these different versions of the Borg
Yeah.
in cool ways.
Switching tracks now to your past when it comes to designing for Star Trek. We've seen like some ships obviously have now been canonized and had that stamp of sort of like being moved into canon. But does that, how does that like affect him? Does anything really change when a ship gets that honor of being selected and moved over into canonicity? Because there's a lot of amazing ship designs. For example, the Andromeda I quite like the look of, and I think
Mm,
it's a lovely ship design, like the the 25th century retelling of the Galaxy class. But that's not
mhm.
a canon ship, but it's a lot of its
Right,
contemporaries are. Is there any sort of
right.
like I don't know? Does canonizing is it any more than like a medal pinned to the chest, or how do you feel about it?
I mean, it's a pretty heavy metal. It's a pretty great big metal, right?
Yeah,
Like, I think that's a good question. It means a lot to me and it means a lot to the team. And I think
yeah,
it means a lot to the players of STO and the fans of STO. And it does make a difference. STO is a 16-year-old game, and so we're not getting a ton of coverage from like the broader like genre and news sites. And we've got great support from our publishers, of course, and who set up interviews like this. But it's still, in terms of like, after a while you have the people who are very like laser focused on those games, and this is the audience for STO. But something like a big event like that happens, and then all of a sudden you've got um, even Star Trek websites like Trek Core and Trek Movie that are primarily concerned with what's happening with shows and don't really care too much about what the games are doing overall. They still cover that stuff, right? So it is
right,
still, it does really help us get back into the eye of, what's happening in Star Trek in a way that is, I think important and valuable. But even if that weren't true, it's still incredibly rare for that to happen, for a licensed game to then give things back to the broader franchise. They're a lot more, I think they're a lot better at it at like Disney, because they have a very tightly knit, like controlled, story group with Star Wars and everything, and they have a much more like centralized um, apparatus than Star Trek does right now.
Yeah.
But I will say, we have great support of Paramount too, and it's kind of, I think some of that is changing with the merger and Skydance and everything.
Mhm.
And because of what happened with Picard, we've got a great relationship with the VFX house, and that's kind of, you saw that bear fruit in Starfleet Academy with the Klingon ships that got canonized.
Yep,
So,
yep.
it is something that I hope continues to happen because it means a lot, if nothing else.
And there's a wealth of knowledge, and like you're saying, 16-year-old game, there's a lot of history and design work there that's just all there to be used. And
Yeah.
it can be utilized. So it seems almost like missing a trick if they don't take
Right.
take take
Yeah,
like
please. I
this
mean,
platter that they have.
we're always happy. We're always happy to
Yeah.
contribute for sure.
So yeah, it's a bit of a loaded question because the answer is, of course,
Hmm.
pretty much I agree. Yeah,
Yeah.
canonizing does matter, but it's kind of like just that sort
Yeah.
of nice kind of
Yeah. Yeah.
moment. Um,
No, well, I do want to share a quick story on
yeah,
that note. Like, when the premiere of Star Trek Picard season 2 happened, we actually had a big watch party at Cryptic, and a bunch of people came, and we saw the STO ships on the screen for the first time. That was,
fantastic.
we didn't have the Enterprise F yet, but that was the Sutherland, the Gagarin, the Ross,
I think
Reliant. Yeah, yeah, I think that's right. And so yeah, it was awesome. Everybody, clapped, and we were all, everybody was really happy and excited, proud. So heady days, but it was just, it was a great big moment for us because we had been doing it for, I mean, 13 years at that point, I guess.
mm,
Maybe 12, 2021, I think. And we knew that we were good at it. We knew we were really good at it because we had been doing it for that long. And eh, hopefully if somebody does something for 12 years, they get really, really good at it. And when and that amount of time and kind of development is the reason that we caught the eye of Dave Blass, when he was getting ready to do Picard season 2 as a production designer. And so his job was just kind of like, overall, what does the show look like, right? That's the
right.
production designer's job, and just everything, like props, effects, all that stuff. He was like leading the art department. And so he knew that when they were going to do this big fleet shot at the beginning of season 2, beginning and end, and all of the negative feedback at the end of season 1 of the inquiry
Inquiry
fleet of
class.
ships that
Yeah.
were all pretty the same, and he didn't want to go through that again. He wanted to expand the look of Starfleet, but he also had like a budgetary
Yeah.
concern of like, hey, we can't afford to make a bunch of new starships ourselves. And so he kind of started looking around for, well, who are the people? Are there any artists out there who are Star Trek fan artists? Maybe we can work out a deal with them or something like that. And uh, and he kept seeing STO ships in Google results. It's like,
Yeah.
what that ship? Oh, that's from Star Trek Online. What's that ship? Oh, that's from Star Trek Online. And so it became really clear to him that like, oh, there is this big pool of really cool official, like already official Star Trek ships out there in the game. And so he reached out to me and we started talking and we worked it all out. Um, but like that only happened because there was a giant catalog,
Yes.
that we had been working on for 12 years at that point. So yeah, it's you there's an opportunity, like, people are lucky, usually aren't just lucky, they're prepared to be lucky, right? And
Yeah.
so that's something that I try to live by.
You mentioned the Ross class as one of the first four that got canonized. Was that the first ship that you sort of did that was mostly your input from scratch? Because I know you, or was that the Kobayashi Maru?
No, the first ship that I did, that I designed myself in, that's in STO, was the Pathfinder, actually.
The
Which I think
Pathfinder.
was the second or third ship I ever modeled for
Nice.
STO. Yeah, and that's a um, special to me. And it was great that they actually ended up making that the Voyager B
Yeah.
in Picard season 3.
I've noticed a couple of details on the Pathfinder that I quite like. Just a couple of little nerdy things. What would have been the RCS thrusters? I've noticed they glow. Are they like impulse powered now, or was that the idea on the Pathfinder? Because I've noticed there's a lot of
Yeah, I
tech
mean,
baked into it.
right, yeah. So I kind of saw it as maybe some sort of like, I don't know if they're little mini impulse engines, or I was kind of thinking it was some sort of like um, gravitic like thrust deflection instead of being mechanical nozzles. It was using some
That's
sort
cool.
of like fields to, force fields to vector the thrust out in different directions.
That's a cool way
But
of
that
doing it.
was
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But it's not something we did every time. It was
No.
something, like you kind of sometimes when you're working on a ship like that, you're like, this needs a detail here, and so you kind of, oh, hey, that looks good, and then you move on, right? And then later you kind of go back and like, okay, what does that do, right?
Right.
Um, but I think that's totally valid, and I'm sure that's what they did a lot on the original shows too.
I think so too. Like there are some details of the Pathfinder that I really do like. The where the deflector should be. Like it's got such a unique shape. It looks like it's got a regular deflector around it. Then it's got the middle of this. What looks to be, I'm assuming, was inspired by the Dauntless, where it's just this.
Yep.
I'm assuming it's the quantum
Yeah.
slipstream
Yeah.
emitter. The drive for it is just like this big bulbous thing with
Hmm.
the emitters across the front that is like
Hmm.
inspired by an existing ship. The only other one we saw with slipstream
Right.
being the Dauntless. And
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
well, I was just going to say, like, is there a favourite era of ship that you would like to design for or see more of? And is it different from just generally like your favourite era of Trek?
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, and I think players got maybe a little OD'd on it, but we did a lot of motion picture era in the last couple of years, and I'm really proud of all that work. We brought a lot of like beta Canon ships into STO, the Ark Royal and the Okinawa from Starfleet Command 2,
Yeah,
the Proxima from Star Trek Legacy, the those were and the Shangri-La that Bill Krause designed from it was canonized in Star Trek Picard on the Ready Room wall of the
yeah.
Titan.
Just a little background
Um,
detail, but it's there.
yeah, yeah, and so that's my favorite era of ship design, and so I kind of went all in the last couple of years, and I think we're good. I think we've served that era for a while. Um, there are plenty more that we could do, right? There
Oh
are
yeah,
plenty that people have asked for that we still haven't gotten a chance to make, and so I'm sure we'll come back to it. But for now, I think we're happy with it. The other I do want to call out also the Romulan Daetra legendary warbird that we did with our legendary Last Stand bundle back in November. That's a TMP era Romulan ship, which you've never seen in canon. So we had kind of a blank canvas to work with there, and
yeah.
that was designed by Jamie Armstrong Hughes, and they did an incredible job on that design. And then I believe Tobias Richter modeled it. It actually won Space Dock's Spaceship of the Year award, which was the first ever time they had done that, and I was very, very proud to be the inaugural winner there. I need to get like a plaque made or
Nice.
something.
I do like Romulan
Um,
ships. They've just got
yeah,
such
yeah, no, they're
drama to them. Brilliant.
right. Yeah, they're beautiful and powerful all the same, right? Like you can appreciate the grace and beauty of that bird motif, but they'll also really impart a sense of like, don't mess with me, you know?
Yeah, birds of
They're
prey. Yeah.
terrifying.
Is there any like? It's I guess in sort of parting question. Is there any sort of details on any starship that you don't see attention being called to that you just want to point out that there's a detail here that I think's really neat on this starship, and
Mm.
I just want everyone to know it's there. Just because
That's a good question.
yeah,
Yeah,
just little things like I saw the little "Do Not Step" sign on the side of one of the shuttlecraft on the nacelles, which
right.
I just love that little detail. Just little things like that.
Yeah, yeah, and that was fun because that was Nick DeGood. Uh, he made that shuttle for us the based on was it the Type 14
14, yeah,
from Picard. We wanted that in the game, and when we were working on it, I asked Nick like, hey, make this make it more detailed than it was in the show. Like make it like if you go to an air show and you look at the helicopters and the jets up close, you see there's tons of tiny little decals and warning labels, do not paint, radiation hazard area, all the do not step, all that stuff,
mm,
like all over those things, and it really brings that thing to life and gives it a really important sense of scale, right? And so that was my challenge to Nick when he was doing that is, and he did a phenomenal job on that asset, just to like level it up and make it like if you were gonna put this next to a Blackhawk helicopter or a Harrier jet or something, like it should feel like it's got the same amount of engineering and consideration and OSHA regulations, right? Like as those other machines. And we try to do at a different level. I mean, there are some specific details that are a lot of fun. We'll put like little windows that are meant to be like observation lounges or arboretums, right? I've done some of that on the Enterprise F. Like there's a big giant observation lounge on the back above the shuttle bay. On the Enterprise F, I'm talking about the remaster that I did for Picard.
Yeah.
I also included four asymmetrical warp field governors. They're the little like circle things. They're inspired by like I included them on the Enterprise F because they're on the Sagan, and I wanted to tie, and kind of modeled them after how they looked in the Sagan because I wanted to tie the Enterprise F to what they were doing with the Sagan to kind of
Right.
unify that look a bit more and bring the Enterprise F more into what they were doing with the Picard era a little bit. But overall, my philosophy on any of the new designs we're doing is, yeah, look at those details like that because I think one of the things that maybe CG ship models have kind of lost is um, is a sense of scale where when they're building an Enterprise or a Voyager that's like 6 feet long, it's massive, right? And when you're working at it, when you're looking at it, and you're up close, you're seeing like this much of it. You're
Mm.
seeing like a foot. And so the people working on that, and like three or four people, or maybe two to four people would be working on the model at the same time. And I think nowadays you do kind of have that, like if for big feature models, you would kind of like this guy would do the nacelles and this guy would do the saucer, and I think they might split up some of that work. But there's something, I think there was something different about everybody being seeing this object at once and seeing where there is detail, where there needs to be detail, where the lack of detail, being able to like easily step back. I mean, there's just the relationship you have with something that's in the room with you is very different than something you have on a screen, right? Like I've experienced that myself, like building models. And so what I try to tell our ship artist is take a hard look at those physical models of like the Excelsior, the Reliant, the Enterprise, that ILM made in the 80s, and notice that there's and the Enterprise E, there was physical model of the Enterprise E, the Voyager, the Defiant, and notice the scale of things is a very specific there's a specific quality to it. There are all these little tiny decals, right? There's weathering is done in a certain way. There's a minimum there's a sort of a minimum and maximum width of thickness to like the sheet styrene plastic, like that, so when they have little panels, right, they're like a certain thickness relative to the rest of the ship, that when you're just sort of making little extrusions in 3D model, it might be a lot chunkier than you realize when you look at those ships and you see like, oh, here's an extra like panel they bolted on, but that's like a millimeter 2 millimeter thick piece of sheet styrene plastic that they glued onto this thing, and relative to the rest of the ship, it's like tiny. It's like a tiny sliver, but that sells the scale, right? When you have something, a detail that is very small compared to the rest of the thing, that makes the thing overall look much bigger.
Right. Yeah.
And that's something that try to instill in our artist is try to pretend that this isn't just a 3D model in your computer, but try to pretend it's 6 feet long because we're making spaceships, but we're making spaceships that through the lens of a 6 foot long, studio Hollywood miniature, right? And that's kind of if we make it look like that, it will then fit in with all of the world class work that ILM and those other guys did. And that's what I want to see is I want to see the STO original ships, put that next to the Excelsior or the Enterprise, and have it just like, oh yeah, that makes sense. They are of the same ilk, the same quality. the same level of detail.
Subtlety in the details and like the
Yeah.
smaller elements. Yeah, I have noticed that on a lot of the models as well. I think for a lot of I might be mistaken, but I feel like for a lot of the weapons points and torpedo outlets, they tend to be now marked out with like a red bracket around the phaser strips, just to be like,
Yeah.
don't mess with this bit, and then like
Right.
red triangles pointing down towards like
Right.
torpedo outlets, being like, don't obstruct, sort of things.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, those little details, yeah, they are fantastic, and I don't know. I guess as well, I just wanted to say that yeah, they do get noticed, and they definitely pay off. They congrats to everyone
Thank
involved
you.
making those ships. They look fantastic. So,
Awesome. Well, I'm glad to hear that.
but yeah, that's pretty much gone through my list of questions. Um,
Awesome.
is there anything else you wanted to add or shout out to? Future
Yeah.
plans or anything?
Yeah. I mean, I think we've got obviously we got Star Trek Online Corruptions coming to PC Tuesday, February 17th, and then after that we've got people can look forward to our next big Starship bundle um, uh, soon. I don't want to give a date, but
Okay.
it'll be soon.
Okay.
I'm very excited about that because we're gonna have some Canon ships, and then we're gonna have some new skins for those ships as well. And I think people are gonna really enjoy what we're cooking up there. There's a lot of fun stuff there
Okay.
that I think you'll get a kick out of too. So
Sounds fun.
really excited for people to see that stuff. Yeah.
Sounds mysterious. Yeah. Okay. We'll have to check it out.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So,
Absolutely. No, I think yeah, it'll be good. It'll be good fodder for videos for sure.
I mean, I'm a little biased, so thank you. But yeah, thanks for coming on to do this brief chat about, I guess, Star Trek Online's legacy and where it's going next. I'm
That's always a pleasure, man.